So hello again, everyone, and this is our Parenting Little Ones fall program for ages and stages. And I'd like to introduce Laura Stern, who is with HCP. And Laura, can you tell everyone about HCP? And sorry, before you do that, as Laura is talking and as we do the rest of our introductions, if anyone has any questions about HCP, please put those into our Q&A because Laura is just going to be here at the beginning of our time together today.
All right, thank you so much, Sarah, for having me. So my name is Laura. I'm a nurse with El Paso County Public Health. I'm a care coordinator with the HCP program. In its inception, it was the handicap program for children. It has evolved into a different few formats, but basically what we do is we provide care coordination services for children who have a special medical care need or any child that is at risk for a physical, developmental, behavioral condition beyond that of a typically developing child. So I like to tell parents that if your child is needing anything beyond that of a typical well child visit, they would qualify for our program. We serve any child living in El Paso County from birth to 21. There is no eligibility or diagnosis requirement to qualify for our program, and our services are free. We don't bill insurance. We don't look at insurance. When we start connecting with families, we ensure that children are being seen by a pediatrician, that there's a dental provider in the home, that the family has insurance. So we really connect you with the appropriate resources at the beginning, and then start to talk through some of those barriers that a family might be facing. We do center our goals around what the family is wanting for their child and for their family. We look at housing, transportation, stuff like that to make sure that those things are in place so that your children are able to get the best care possible. If those are stressors in your life, then the likelihood that you're going to make an appointment for your child is kind of on the bottom of the list. So we would like to make sure that those things are in place. We really work with the family and the provider to get referrals done. If you have any concerns for your child, sometimes providers have just a short amount of time when you go in for those well checks. So you're may not get your questions answered. So we can be a great resource for that as well. Talk through what maybe your concerns are and what resources are available to address those concerns, and then help to get those services in place. The earlier that a child gets some interventions related to behaviors or developmental concerns, the better outcomes they're going to have further down the road. And since this is an ages and stages talk, I do want to talk about, at each doctor's appointment, you should be getting an Asq screening from the pediatrician. Ideally, it would be best to get that at home, so you can call the provider's office and ask them to send it to you, either via mail or email, so that you can work on that at home. Sometimes the questions that are on there, you don't know what the answers are, and you don't have some of them as the children get older, that you don't have the tools with you at the doctor's appointment. So then you can't answer the question effectively, or you're running around after a kiddo and you just want to get it done. So you're not answering the questions really. So it helps to have time and be in your own space to get those questions answered. And then you can talk through it with your doctor and see if there's any concerning spots that you or they may have. Any parent can call our program and self-refer, and we're happy to walk them through what the process is to get resources in place if you have concerns for your child's development or growth. I think that's about it.
Thank you so much, Laura. Yeah, HCP is an awesome program. We always want to make sure parents know about this great program that we have in our community. And next, we're going to have two experts from our another local program, the Resource Exchange, introduce themselves and talk about what kinds of questions they can answer. But I'd like to remind any of our attendees that if you have a question about HCP, then please feel free to add that to the Q&A right now, because Lara will only be here for a few more minutes. So Amanda, would you like to introduce yourself first?
Sure. And you want me to speak a little about the resource exchange also, right?
Yes,
Okay.
please. Thank you.
So my name is Amanda Cute. I'm an occupational therapist working for the resource exchange. I've been with them for 7 years now, and I've been an OT for about 18. And all of my career, I've worked with pediatrics. So I have, I would think, a pretty good knowledge base now of working with young kids. I love working with babies. My specialty is really that birth to 3 population. Love working with babies, love working with development, making sure babies are developing, and I have a strong passion for feeding. So any questions related to any type of gross motor development, like when should my baby be sitting, crawling, walking, fine motor development, when should my child be drawing a picture or using a crayon or feeding themselves with a fork or spoon, and then any type of questions around feeding or even sleep and sleep habits in babies and young kids, I'm happy, would love to help and answer questions around any of those areas. So just to give you a little bit of information about the Resource Exchange, it's an amazing organization in town that provides early intervention to any kids birth to 3 that are struggling with some form of development. So we have really qualified therapists in the Resource Exchange that can help your children. So we have physical therapists that help with any kind of gross motor concern. So concerns with my baby's not rolling, my baby's not sitting, crawling, walking, those kind of things. We have occupational therapists who help with any type of fine motor development. So how children are learning to use their hands for grasping and doing things, to sensory processing issues, to feeding, to play. All of those type of skills can be addressed by an occupational therapist. We have fantastic speech therapists who help with language development, cognitive development, anything that have to do with your baby talking and communicating. And then we have wonderful developmental interventionists who help with all sorts of fascinating things around play and around behaviors and social emotional development, which is really important in young children. So we have quite a variety of specialists that can help your children. And so if you have a question or you have a concern that my child just doesn't seem to be developing in this area, you can bring that concern to your doctor, and your doctor can refer to us, or you can even self-refer to us by calling the Resource Exchange. If you have a concern, we can do an evaluation and see if you qualify for our program. And then the wonderful thing about our program is it's state funded. So we do try to bill insurance, but if you don't have insurance, it is covered through the state. So it is a wonderful opportunity for babies to kids up to 3 years old. Okay.
Thank you, Amanda. And before Chris goes, either Amanda or Chris can answer this, but I feel like I remember one of our previous TRE folks said that in order to qualify for services, they only need to have a delay in like one area at a certain percentage. Can you talk about that?
So when we do our qualifying evaluation, you will have 2 providers that look at the child and do the evaluation. So it's usually either an occupational or a physical therapist, and then either a speech language pathologist or a developmental interventionist. So you will have 2 sets of eyes on the child, and we do a standardized assessment tool, and we look at 6 different areas of development. We look at gross motor development, fine motor development, social and emotional development, cognitive, language, and then what we call adaptive, which is where feeding and sleep and stuff like that come in. And we do have to have a delay of 33%, but just in one of those areas. So it's worth it if you have a concern to come to us and see if you qualify for our program. And even if it's just, you know, a little concern and you don't qualify, the evaluation gives good information to you. We always give recommendations and next steps. So I just encourage anybody, seek us out. Early intervention is the best thing you can do if you have a concern, because the earlier you address the concern, sort of the easier the process is. So we encourage and love for anybody that has, you know, feels like you might benefit from us, definitely give us a call.
Thank you so much. And I saw that we did have one question in the chat about HCP. So I'm going to go ahead and answer that, or ask that, and Laura can answer that. Someone is asking, is HCP the best place to start with a new diagnosis of hip dysplasia in an 18-month-old to find out what resources we should be looking into or what we will potentially be facing?
Sure. So probably the best place is to talk with your pediatrician and see what recommendations your pediatrician has as far as supports that you can put into place for your child. And then HCP can help to get those resources set up for you. Sometimes doctors will send a referral and the referral gets lost, or the parent doesn't know where the referral was sent and nobody ever follows up. So HCP can come alongside the parents, follow up with the doctor if you don't remember what recommendations the doctor had. So I always say to start with your pediatrician, see what recommendations they have, and then the next step, you can contact HCP and we would be happy to talk through what those recommendations are. If they didn't provide any resources as far as who can provide those services, we can help out with that as well.
Thank you so much, Laura.
You're
All right,
welcome.
well, you have a good evening. Thank you for joining us. I don't see any other HCP related questions, but we do have a question in the Q&A.
Thank you.
So have a good night. Thanks. Okay, so this Q&A question is 11-month-old, not crawling, will scoot around, but no crawling, runs Flintstone style, but will not put weight on legs for more than a few seconds. Used to stand without issue, but will now only stand for short periods of time. Should we be worried about this child not being more mobile?
Sure. I think this could justify a referral to us. So I'm assuming that this child is bottom scooting and not crawling on hands and knees. And some kids will not crawl and go straight to walking. We encourage crawling, and we love that hands and knees crawling position because all of that weight bearing and weight shifting through the palms of your hands helps to develop the arches in your hands for fine motor development. And also that crawling is really good for brain and cognitive development. So we really love babies to be on hands and knees and do some crawling, but there are some kids that skip it and go straight to walking. But since we're not doing that fluidly, we're having some, sounds like, trouble with walking and weight bearing, I think that I would talk to your doctor. Always talk to the doctor and see what their opinion is. But this might be a good referral.
Thank you so much, Amanda. Chris, to add?
No, I agree with what Amanda is saying completely. It's always good to just err on the side of caution and talk with your pediatrician, ask for a referral. It might nothing might come out of it, and that's great. Then you get to know that your kids are developing nicely and doing fine. But if there is an issue, the earlier the better, like Amanda said earlier.
And in the meantime, if you want some suggestions on things you can work on between now and if you decide to do a referral, doing a lot of stuff on like sitting on a stool and putting a puzzle or a shape sorter or something on the floor, even a book on the floor, have the child sit on the stool, something on the floor. So they're having to do a lot of bending forward and putting their hands on the ground in front of them. Helps with getting that weight bearing and weight shifting forward. You could also try stuff on the belly. So just having the child play on their belly, read a book on their belly. So they're just doing more stuff on their belly where they're using their hands. And then thirdly, you could try setting up an obstacle course on the floor with lots of pillows, stuff that they'd have to kind of like shimmy over on their belly, just to encourage movement on the belly, even crawling through like a little tunnel. So just, you know, even though we're 11 months, that's still a great time for being on our belly and for crawling. And we might get some of that weight bearing through the arms and through the hands. So just some little tips of things that you could try. But I would seek out a referral if you feel like you're up for that.
Thank you. Those are some great tips to have too. All right, we have a question in the chat, and this is our last question that we have in the queue. So attendees, please add more questions into the Q&A. There is a 3-year-old super picky eater who refuses to try most any foods. How do we know if it's within normal limits? This child maintains weight, but just has an incredibly limited diet. And I will add, I'm going to of course, Amanda and Chris can answer this question, but we will also have some registered dietitians at our Feed Me program, which will be in a couple weeks. So, you know, we can answer tonight, but there will also be more answers then. So feel free to hang on to that question if you have more after that.
Do you want me to do this one, Chris, with the feeding?
Yeah, start it out.
Okay. So I will just start this and say toddlers are picky. They're picky, finicky little eaters. One day they love something, the next day you're like, what happened? So it is normal for toddlers to be what we call picky, and it is normal for them to one day like something, the next day think it's horrible, the next day like it. But you know, we do hope that a 3-year-old will eat a decent variety of food and pull food from each food group. So we want some fruits, we want some vegetables, we want some protein, we want some carbohydrates. The fact that your child is maintaining their growth curve and their weight is fantastic. So that can take some of the stress off of your plate. What I like to suggest to parents is continue to make food fun and continue to make it a positive, rewarding experience. And the more you can expose them to a variety of foods is for the best, because eventually they do start adding more food to their diet. And the best thing you can do for that is continue to expose them to food. They say our little brains need to see and interact with a food like over 30 times before we decide if we're going to like it or not, which sounds like a lot. But what you can do is keep offering them a variety of foods at each meal. So give them some of their foods that you know they like, and then put two foods on there that are new foods or foods that we're still working on. The more they see the food, are around the food, touch the food, smell the food. We have to do all these things before we decide if we're going to like a specific food. So the more they interact, touch, engage with that food, the more likely they're going to eventually eat it. I like to say, keep it neutral. You know, we're not going to make a huge deal if they eat something, and we're not going to make a huge deal if they don't. We stay pretty neutral, and we talk about the objective facts about food. Oh, look at this purple circle, which is a grape. Look at this, you know, green circle, which is a cucumber. We talk about food and their colors, their shapes, maybe what they smell like. And if the child brings that food to their mouth and eats it, fantastic. You could talk about, gosh, this feels crunchy in my mouth, or this makes my mouth feel funny. You know, just talk about food. The more you talk about it, the more they feel comfortable with it. And then have your child help you in the kitchen. Have them help prepare the food. have them help you, watch you cooking the food. Because again, it's another exposure to the food. So I hope that answered your question. I mean, we do obviously love it when our kids eat a good variety and we know they're getting all their nutrition. But at this young age, it's best to just keep offering it in small little amounts, and hopefully eventually they will feel comfortable and brave enough to try that food.
And I would just add a little bit to that, because that was beautiful. Along with experiencing food and seeing foods and all of that, allowing kids to actually play and mess around with the food too. So I know I was brought up that you don't play with your food, you eat it. And you're here at the table until you're all done. So a lot of us were brought up that way, but it's good for little ones to be able to play and explore with their food. And I love what Amanda said about having them help pick out the vegetable or the main dish or something that is part of the meal, and then letting them help with that, whether it's using like a plastic knife and cutting up soft foods, or helping to set the table, doing something that they can be a part of the routine and making that a regular practice. And then also modeling, you're eating the same foods or pretty close to it as your child is. And that will help kids to really want to try things on their own as well, because they're watching you do it. And the last thing that I would say is some parents will let their kids kind of run around during maybe less formal meals like lunchtime or snack or something like that. Sometimes kids need that consistent routine with meals. Not all kids, but some kids may need that, to be sitting at a certain spot each time they have a meal. And the meal starts at the table and ends at the table. So when the child gets done and they're ready to go play, they're all done and they can wait till the next snack or the next meal before they eat again. So that can play a part as well, because sometimes I've seen kids that are kind of grazers, I call them. They come and they'll take a bite and they'll run around and play. They aren't as apt to try different things. They just kind of go to their go-to foods. So that's all I would add. Sarah Ellen, can I have a moment to just introduce myself a little bit and explain what it is that I'm doing too? I know Amanda gave
Did I miss that? I'm so sorry, Chris.
It's okay. No worries.
Oh.
She gave a good description of what a developmental, I can't even say it, goodness, a developmental interventionist does. I am also an autism specialist on the autism team, and I love working with kids with autism. I'm a part of a program that we do in a child care center called Power of Peers, where I bring my little kids that either have suspected autism or there is a diagnosis into a normal classroom and help teach those kids to learn how to learn and grow and develop in a preschool or childcare setting with other peers that have, oh my gosh, it's late, that are good peer models, we'll just say. So I work with the peers to help teach my kids how to play and use good eye contact and use social communication. So the other thing that I love doing is working with behavior challenges. That is one of my passions, and I've been working in early intervention for the last 6 years. But in early childhood as a whole, I used to work for Head Start for 17 years. So I've been in the field for, oh my gosh, 23 years or so. So I've had a lot of experience in different areas of development.
Thank you, Chris. And again, I'm sorry about that.
Okay.
We do have several questions in the queue. So I'm going to go ahead and ask the one in the Q&A, and then we'll get to one in the chat and then back to another one in the Q&A. So someone asks, My baby is 7 months old and is super interested in standing and moving. He was putting weight on his legs by 5 months. Is a walker okay, or is there another alternative? And I'm wondering if they mean a walker, like a baby walker. So
I feel like I would need a little bit more information to answer this. So 7 months, I think that's great that the baby's putting a lot of weight through their legs. That tells me their trunk is strong and their hips are strong. We do like to encourage lots of belly time still around the 7-month age and crawling. So, before I could say, let's do a walker and hang out in there, I'd like to make sure that the baby is showing skills for crawling. So if they're not crawling, I would certainly stand your baby up, let them stand, because they can see the world differently that way. And a lot of babies like that weight bearing through their legs. But let's work on crawling and really encourage crawling for a couple months before we hurry up and get to walking. If your baby's already crawling, that's super on the early end, and you're going to have a quick walker probably. The little exercisers, I think, are more recommended from our physical therapists because the jumperoos and the bouncers are okay with typical development, but sometimes if we're developing atypically, they can cause our bodies to do more pushing back than what we like to see. So I think one of the exercisers, it's more of like a standstill thing, is okay. But again, at 7 months old, I think it's great that your baby likes to put weight through, but I would really still focus on crawling at this point. Well, I hope that answered the question.
thank you, Amanda. We have a question in the chat. Any advice on weaning baby off of breastfeeding? Baby refuses bottle. It's a comfort habit at this point, but it's driving the mom a little nutty. So I don't know. I should have maybe asked. I don't know how old the child is at that point.
Is there a way we could find that out and come back to the question?
Yeah, attendee, if you could add that into the chat, that would be great. I will ask another question from the Q&A while you can do that. Baby sits independently but likes to throw self backwards. Is this normal? And I don't know, again, they don't say the age.
So I will say extension and sitting can be normal when they're first learning to sit. So when they don't have a lot of that trunk control or protective extension where they put their hands down. So if we're talking about a young baby, like 3-4 months old, then I would say some pushing back is normal. If we're talking about a little bit older of a baby in that 5 to 7 month range where sitting should be a thing, then I think we want to encourage more forward, because babies first learn to sit around 5 months, which is called a propped sit position. So they will sit with their bodies forward a little bit and their hands to the ground and sit up that way. So they're supporting some of their trunk through weight bearing through their hands. And it's called a propped sit, and that happens around 5 months. And then by 5.5, 6 months, we start moving our hands up a little bit as we gain really good belly control for sitting. And then usually by 6-7 months, we can sit real tall, we can move our hands out and play. So we need to be able to do that forward sitting before we can learn to actually sit up. So one thing you can do for this baby, and again, we don't know the age, is have the baby sit, put a fun little toy in between the baby's legs that you could encourage the baby to put their hands down on and play with, so that they're thinking about more forward sitting with their hands forward, engaged on some sort of soft tactile toy, and see if we can encourage that instead of the pushing back.
Thank you, Amanda. And back to our weaning question. The child is 15 months old. So if you have any thoughts on that.
And this was, remind me of the question, they were just having trouble
They want to
weaning breast.
wean baby off of breast. He refuses bottle. It doesn't say whether they've tried a cup or anything.
Okay, so my thought would be at 15 months, hopefully we're eating solid foods and we're drinking out of some sort of a cup. A straw cup would be preferred, even an open cup at 15 months. So my hope would be that we're doing 3 solid meals with some sort of milk, breast milk even, or if your doctor's approved you guys to go to some sort of cow's milk or milk alternative, that we're drinking out of that during meals. And we're just encouraging lots of good nutrition through those meals. Breastfeeding is still, I mean, it's everybody's preference, their own personal preference on how long they want to breastfeed, and breastfeed can be encouraged, well past 15 months. But we want to make sure that we're eating well, we're getting good calories through food at 15 months, and breastfeeding is something more, that happens maybe around nap time or bedtime, or for a comforting reason, like we got hurt and we need mommy. Breastfeeding is really still good for those kind of things at 15 months. So, whoever asked this question, if your child is having trouble with eating or drinking from a cup, this could be a good reason to contact us for some help. If not, I would just encourage, lots of good oral motor skills and lots of good variety of foods during meals and lots of cup drinking during meals. And hopefully that can help start this weaning process.
So Amanda, the attendee has given a little bit more information in the chat. And if you would like to continue to address in the chat, I'd like to move on to another question, just because we have a couple more questions. So we can circle back to it if we have time later too. All right. We have a question here. Trying to follow which one was, yes, this one will be next. So at what age can attention deficit issues be seen? What are early warning signs, or what can a parent do to promote good attention and limit hyperactivity?
I'll start with this one. I will say that doctors are not diagnosing attention deficit disorder with really young children. I'm not really sure what age, but it is much older than early childhood or early in toddler age to preschool age. It's older than that even. So, and the reason why is because their brains are still developing and growing, and what can look like attention deficit disorder isn't always that. It can be, and you can see signs of that early on, but it also could mean that something else is going on as well. I would go to your pediatrician and talk about your concerns and ask them, what resources are out there for you. And it could be that you may need to come and see us for a referral and see what's going on. It could be that there could be a lot of different things going on, things that you can do to kind of help kids to slow down their activity a little bit and attend to activities a little bit more. There's lots of things that you can do. I don't know what age the child is that you're talking about, so that's a little bit difficult. But with toddlers, the first thing that I do is help them to learn how to clean up right away and try not to have full access to all toys all at once, which it's hard because you want them to be able to get their toys in their bedroom and be able to play on their own. But the kids they get overwhelmed by having so many toys around and being able to access them, and they have a hard time really attending to each toy for very long at all, maybe seconds sometimes. When they start getting toys out and they start throwing them around and you have toys everywhere, they are just not able to regulate themselves, possibly to be able to sit and really pay attention to the toy that they're playing with. So putting most of their toys up, maybe in clear containers so they can see what's up there, and they kind of know. Maybe you have them in categories so they know where their favorite toys are, and they have to ask for help to get a toy down, and they play with that toy and then they clean it up, and then we get out the next toy. Also, as much as possible, if parents can, devote some time to playing with their kids on the floor and interacting with them and showing kids how their toys work. That can also help them to kind of process how their toys are supposed to work. Not all kids know how to play with toys right away. Sometimes they need to be shown. Some kids problem solve very quickly and figure it out. Other kids need modeling and support to kind of figure that out. But if you're really concerned about the activity, and I have seen young kids I call them human tornadoes. They're all over the place and they have a hard time concentrating on anything, let alone playing. Those are kids that I would start with your pediatrician first.
Amanda, do you have anything to add to that, or shall we move on to another question?
We can move on. She
Okay.
did a great job and I was trying to answer in the chat.
Yes, thank you so much. All right, so we have a question. Our OT recommended play therapy for behavioral issues, and they would like to know what that is. And before you guys answer, I'd like to just add myself that we will have a play therapist on our Play With Me panel, which I believe will be November 11th. So I'd be happy to let Chris and Amanda answer that, but do know if you have more questions about play therapy, we will have a play therapist on that panel.
So I'm not a play therapist, so I'm glad that there's going to be another session with a play therapist on. I have had the privilege of observing some play therapists a few times, and we also have a couple of play therapists at the Resource Exchange that I've been able to talk with and glean really good ideas from. It is a great idea to think about play therapy if there is some really big challenging behaviors. And a lot of times that could be stemming from trauma, or it could be behavior issues from an underlying condition or delay. So it really just kind of depends. So I don't know the history, so I don't want to say that it's black and white, this or that. But it's a good thing to explore. There's a lot of really good play therapists in Colorado Springs, and talking to your pediatrician about who they would recommend and the different ones that are in town is a good idea. And you can get on their websites and find out how they do their play therapy, what they're all about, what their philosophy is. Play therapy is really a very gentle way for kids to work out some trauma issues or anger issues, something that's going on within them that they don't understand, and it's coming out in behaviors. Behavior really is language. They really are trying to tell you something or get something out, and they don't know how to do it at a young age. So play therapy is a really, really great way gentle, like I said, gentle way for kids to work out some of these things.
And I'm gonna add a link into the chat right now, but this this link is to Family Care Center in Colorado Springs, and they have a video about how play therapy works, and they've got information on what it is, and it will be one of the Family Care Center play therapists who will be on our session in November. So that might be a helpful resource to check out as well. All right, we've got some more questions, so I'm going to go ahead and start reading those. We have a question. My little one isn't talking at all at 1.5 years, but knows lots of American Sign Language. Should we be concerned about that verbal lack of communication? And I'm going to add in too, we will have a speech and language session a little bit later on this series, but please do, Amanda or Chris, if you have some answer for that, that would be great.
Yeah, that's really interesting to me that this child is not talking a whole lot, but using really good ASL language. So that tells me that they have good language skills, that receptive skills. They understand a lot about what's going on in their environment, in their little world. And they have found a way that works for them to communicate. And so that is great. I do wonder why, because at 1.5 years, they should have quite a few words by now. And they should be at least attempting to make sounds, babbling, trying to attempt words, simple phrases even. So I don't know. I mean, one thing that I'm wondering about is if there's been a hearing screen done or hearing test done. But I would be concerned enough to possibly think about getting a referral for a speech language therapist. And I'm not a speech language therapist, of course, but you know, just in like thinking about development, I think this would be a really good referral.
I do too, because by 18 months, we would hope for 15 or 20 at least spoken words. And so I think the signs are fantastic. But I do agree with Chris strongly that if we're not speaking the words too, definitely get the hearing check, because if you do get a referral, that would be one of the first things that a speech therapist would ask for before starting speech services, is making sure that the hearing is intact. But then what you can just keep doing is every time you encourage sign, just obviously pair the word with the sign so that they continue to hear the word, and do a lot of mouth modeling. So, you know, if you're talking about cup, bring the cup really up to the mouth so that they can watch your mouth. Because sometimes it could be, you know, a motor planning, like they just can't figure out how to get the word out, even though obviously it's in there if they're signing it. So do a lot of modeling with drawing attention to your mouth, so that they can see how that's working.
You guys are both so amazing. Thank you for all of these awesome answers. All right, we have another question in the Q&A. Our child used to sleep through the night until teething. Now they wake up several times at night screaming and crying. We have tried many things, baby Highlands, teething gel, teething toys, Tylenol, ibuprofen. Nothing really helps. Baby is fine during the day, but from 10 p.m. to 5 a.m. is up every 1.5 to 2 hours. Is there anything else that we can do? And it might be helpful if this attendee could put the age of the child, of the baby.
Age of the child, and are they still teething, or have they worked themselves through the teeth? Or is that done now? So if they could answer that.
And are the teeth out yet, or are they still coming through?
Yeah. Sleep is a hard one. But yeah, the age would help a little bit to answer that a little better.
My baby got 8 teeth in 2 months, between 6 and 7 months. So I feel for you, parent, about that, because that is rough.
Is there another question we can answer in the meantime?
Yes, I was just going to say. We have a question. I would love to help my children emotionally regulate. Since starting preschool, he's been struggling. The teachers aren't responding to him, stating his feelings. We do deep breathing and counting and all the Daniel Tiger songs at home.
Oh, that's really hard. Yeah, anything that goes along with behavior, regulation, it's never a simple answer. Every kid is a little bit of a puzzle. And a lot of times what we do at the Resource Exchange when we start working with a child is we ask lots of questions. And so I want to ask lots of questions. I wish I could ask you so many questions right now. Just to kind of get a feel for, you know, what might be going on in his day at preschool. I wonder if at home he has a hard time regulating. It sounds like you have some good strategies, so possibly he does a little bit, but you figured out some nice strategies at home. But at school, it sounds like it's a lot worse. So it could be that he's overwhelmed by lots of sounds, lots of kids moving around, activity, lights, colors. I mean, it could be a variety of things that are helping him to feel dysregulated. And that takes a while to tease out. I don't know if he likes to crawl or climb on things, jump off things, if he loves to swing, go down slides, do heavy work kind of activities like pushing and pulling, things with his hands, like Play-Doh can be calming and soothing. There are a lot of different ideas that I know Amanda will probably have several more to add to that you could try to help calm and regulate. I also wonder, you know, what kind of relationship you have with his preschool teacher, and if you're able to sit down with them and talk about, you know, what could be going on at school, that, you know, what are they seeing as far as his regulation? What do they think are his triggers? And offer some of the things that you do at home that's working for him, and see if you guys can kind of work together as a team on figuring out what you can do for him at school.
Yeah, that was a fantastic answer. So I don't really have too much to add to that, other than maybe working with the preschool teacher about having his own quiet, calm down space at school. So a little tent, or just underneath a table where they can put a blanket over it, where if he needs to go have some quiet, you know, let me self-soothe and regulate my body on a beanbag chair, something squishy on him, just to get away, and we can kind of recenter and reorganize ourselves. Sometimes that's helpful. I know one of my children who is in kindergarten this year struggles with some anxiety. And so we have one of those quiet spots at home. And when she starts feeling stressed out, she knows, okay, I can go into my quiet spot and I can kind of pull myself together. You know, maybe bring in a special toy from home that can be in that spot to help him feel safe. And so that is not really my area of expertise. So Chris did a great job answering it, but I do like the idea of kind of a quiet, calm down space.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you for bringing that up. That's huge for some kids. They really love that space to just kind of regroup and be alone.
And we will also have a big behaviors and big emotions program this session. I keep plugging all the sessions, but that will be, I can't remember which one is next week, but that will, please check out our website. And if you haven't registered for those, you can also ask that question then if you would like more information. So we did have a follow-up from the child who used to sleep through the night until teething and now wakes up many times, and they've tried a lot of things. They said that baby is still teething at 10 months with 6 uppers. 3 are poking, 3 are under the gums, poking in and out. And there are 2 lower teeth already in.
Okay, so sleep it can be so tricky, but I love to hear that your baby was sleeping through the night. So that means that your baby knows how to sleep through the night, and that you've done a fantastic job on teaching your baby early on, because 10 months, you wouldn't believe, we have lots of kids over a year old that aren't sleeping through the night yet. So great job, because sleep is hard to figure out with our kids. The biggest suggestion I would have is talk to the doctor about ways, like, I don't know if you're allowed to do Tylenol or ibuprofen or anything like that. So I would talk, like, because if it really is a pain thing, I would talk to your doctor about what could help with that. But from a sleep perspective, continuing to have that consistent sleep routine. So we always say, feed your baby, then do some quiet play, and then put your baby down where they're quiet. I mean, they're awake, but ready to go to sleep. And so continuing to do that routine when they wake up in the middle of the night. So go in and comfort your baby, talk to them for a minute, and then put them down again so that they're still slightly awake, so that they can still self-soothe on their own and fall asleep. So just continuing with that consistent routine. Try to make sure you still get your really good naps, because a nap time and good naps throughout the day do help your baby get better sleep at night. So I know it's a tough stretch, and it's hard for us parents when our babies don't sleep, because I know when I don't sleep, I don't function the best. So I always feel so bad for parents that aren't sleeping, but I would say being consistent with your routine is really the best way to help your baby keep going to sleep.
Yeah, I agree with that. This is just a really tough time for your kiddo and for you. And hopefully once all the teeth get in, this phase will go away and they will get back to their normal sleeping pattern that you already established. Hang in there. It looks like you've tried everything under the sun to work on the pain factor. But yeah, it's just a really hard stage in life. So we'll be thinking about you.
Yep. Just try to stay consistent so that when they do get through that pain of the teeth, they remember what that routine was for being able to fall back asleep on their own.
As I mentioned before, we went through this just recently. I also have a almost 10-month-old, and we dealt with some illnesses recently, and it was like each one would just set back on the sleep, and we were like, you were doing so well, and now we're waking up every 2 hours, and this is exhausting. I have to say I'm grateful that we're in a time period right now where he is sleeping better. So I'm going to enjoy it while it lasts and hope it lasts maybe a little bit longer this time, but it is so hard. So I feel for you. We have a comment in the chat that a baby just did the same thing and eventually got back to sleeping well, even better than before. Feeding, baths, and cuddles helped. Definitely big on routine. So, we all feel for you. Hang in there. We have hopefully time for another question if there's any other questions. And I think this has been a really good evening thus far. I have to say again, I'm sorry for not doing our poll on our ages. I normally do that right at the beginning, and that would have maybe been helpful for the start of this. But as I'm waiting to see if any other questions come up, just a reminder for those in attendance, please do look for that email that we'll send out with information about all the resources, contact information for TRE and development. And that will be coming this Saturday, hopefully, as well as the link for our survey, which when you fill it out is your entry into our gift card drawing, as well as our grand prize KiwiCo crate subscriptions. So, and Amanda has just put her contact information in the chat. So if you guys want to follow up with her directly afterwards, that will be great. Chris, I can't remember if you had said that was something that you can email me that later. But I'm not seeing any other questions at the moment. What? I'm sorry.
Can't remember either.
Okay. But we will be sending out lots of great resources that Amanda and Chris have shared with us. So yep, we've got their email addresses there, and I will also include both in our email. I'm just writing that down. And all right, well, I'm not seeing another question. I'm going to keep an eye out for that. But while we wait, just in case we do get more questions, let me go through what we have coming up. So tonight is Ages and Stages, but next week on October 14th, we will have Talk and Tots. So we will have a speech language pathologist who can answer questions about speech, as well as several folks who could answer questions about being bilingual and introducing second languages, including working with ASL. Then on October 28th, we have big behaviors and big emotions, and we'll have, I believe, several therapists and a parenting expert who can answer parenting questions dealing with behaviors. On November 4th, we have our Feed Me program for nutrition and baby-led weaning. And then on November 11th, we have Play With Me, which is our play and playful learning activities program where we'll have that play therapist. So it's 5 programs this series. We are skipping the 21st, but we will be back again the 7th, the 14th, the 28th, the 4th of November, and November 11th. So I'm not seeing any other questions. I think we might be able to end out early unless, Amanda, did you want to follow up again with that question from before? You answered it in the chat, but if you wanted to just share that with the recording, you could do that.
Are we talking about the feeding one?
Yes.
I have to go back.
Yeah.
So we were talking about weaning off breastfeeding, and the baby is not interested in drinking any milk from a cup or a bottle. So that can be tricky because sometimes babies just really get a preference for how they like their milk. So the suggestion that I put in the chat was, we just have to get used to doing something different. So at each of the meals, have your water cup, which it sounds like the baby will drink fine out of, and have a cup with breast milk or whatever kind of milk you're offering your baby. And every meal, here's our water, here's our milk. And we present both of the cups to the baby. Again, with a kind of no pressure attitude. Here's water you can drink, here's milk you can drink. Eventually, all of us get curious enough to say, gosh, every single time my mommy's giving me this cup with this white stuff in it. And eventually they will go to drinking out of it. So it might be a process of a few days to a couple weeks, but we just keep presenting it to them in the same cup. You know, here's your water, here's your milk. And then you can also try little things like, because sometimes babies, get used to, gosh, I'm only used to clear things in this cup. This looks a different color. What is this? So we can do stuff like we can take our water cup and you can freeze some breast milk and ice cubes or some regular milk and ice cubes. Just give the baby their straw cup with an ice cube of milk in it, so that over time while the baby's drinking, it changes the color just a little bit and the flavor just a little bit, so that we slowly get used to our water tasting like milk. And then we can, add to that. And then I'd say you can do milk and other things. Drink milk from your spoon, drink milk from cereal, put milk in different kinds of cups and offer it, so that we're getting lots of exposure to milk in different ways. And if that didn't answer it enough too, feel free to email me and I'm happy to brainstorm more with you.
Thank you both so much, Amanda and Chris. This has been an awesome program. We're so grateful for how you share your expertise with our attendees here. And I'd like to wish everyone a good night. Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you.
We've recorded this program. It should be up on YouTube, hopefully within the next week or so. Good night.
Good night.
Night.